Creating large-scale art has been Gordon Huether's passion for over 30 years. From the beginning of his career in 1987, the German-American artist has been fascinated by the interplay between light, glass, and color as he explored the artistic possibilities of refraction and reflection in glass fabrications. He began exploring other media, moving between highly refined materials like polished aluminum and dichroic glass to gritty, repurposed and salvaged materials like rusted steel and weathered wood. Gordon's installations are almost always site-specific and are integrated into architecture and landscape for both public and private clients throughout the world. Projects have included art installations for airports, corporations, civic buildings, hotels, hospitals, libraries, museums, parking garages, recreation and transportation centers, and universities. Please welcome Gordon Huether.
Use the mic, okay. Thank you, Greg. A lot of familiar faces. Nice to see you again. New faces. Nice to meet you. Last night, spent some time with you all, and somebody brought out Jägermeister, and so I crossed the line instead of walked the line. So, but I think I'll do okay. So the elevator speech that when somebody asks me what I do, which I'm gonna just do it with you really quickly, it's pretty kind of simple. I specialize in large-scale, site-specific, permanent art installations in all kinds of different venues. Greg outlined some of them. I live and work out of Napa. That's our studio up there on the left, about a 15,000 square foot studio with about 12 people that work with us, or work with me. So on an overview, just so you understand what I'm going to kind of talk about, I'm going to start with personal history. You might think that's kind of weird, but I think it will help put this thing into context, this idea of walking the line between being a business studio owner and an artist. I'm going to talk about the studio. I'm going to talk about the structure of business, or my business, the creative process, and I'm going to just hit on a few case studies, and then we'll see if we still have time, or if you have any interest, we can do some Q&A. My mother and father they immigrated from Germany, and they met on a boat and went to New York and wound up in Rochester, New York, and that's where I was born. And then they, for whatever reason, they went to Napa in the early 60s. That's me there with lederhosen. So does anybody know what lederhosen is? Okay, well, right. So it kind of just is one of the reasons I think that I'm a little off sometimes, because growing up in California with lederhosen is kind of a weird concept. Anyways, that's my mother's father there, my grandfather from Berlin. And I'll talk a little bit more about Hubert in a minute. So when I was about in kindergarten, about this time, I was already like freaking out, panicking what I was gonna do with my life. I was so worried about it. And I'm only like in kindergarten, it's like, get over it, just relax for a minute, would you? But you know, I got this picture in my head that when you're born, you're like getting on a train. And the span of your life is when that train's moving, and your life is over when you get off the train. So I had this like epiphany that, oh my God, every day's going by, I gotta figure it out, I gotta do something, I need to know who I am, what am I gonna do? It made me think of Mark Twain. He's always Mr. Clever Quotes there. The two most important days in your life are the day you were born, right? And the other one is when you know why. And so, fortunately for me, or unfortunately for me, I figured that out fairly early. I knew that I had the heart and the mind of an artist, and that's who I needed to be, and that's what I was going to be. There was a little problem that developed in that same thought process, is that I didn't have any talent, or I thought I had no talent. I was defining it in a different way, whatnot. So it was almost like God was playing some sort of cruel joke on me. So give me the heart and soul of an artist, but no talent. I mean, how screwed up is that? People have issues in their lives, some divorces and whatnot. So my parents got divorced when I was about 10 years old, moved me with my siblings to San Francisco, in a kind of an inner city kind of environment. It was pretty rough. And I had all this fear and anger and just really a messed up kid, basically. And you know, I was kind of hoping that life would kind of go like on a train, like I was just showing you, like go from point A to point B, and that's your path. like a lot of people's paths, maybe most people's paths, I don't know, I'm just talking about myself right now. It kind of turned out kind of messy and convoluted, but I still wound up getting to where I wanted to be, which is to be here with you today. So one of those detours was I wound up in juvenile hall in San Francisco for 3 months. So it was an opportunity for reflection. It was an opportunity for polishing up those epiphanies that I had when I was younger. And so when I got out of juvenile hall in San Francisco, I moved up back to Napa Valley to live with my father, who had remarried a Mexican woman that had 6 of her own kids. So they were very, let's say they were very unenthusiastic about my arrival, but they were gracious enough to let me live with them. And in the 70s, sand candles, terrariums, remember that? Incense. Oh, you don't remember that? Oh, because you're too young, I get it, okay, whatever. My dad gave me a little pattern of a parrot, and a little box of colored glass, and I made the world's ugliest stained glass window, and this isn't the one, it was uglier than that even, okay? So it was really bad. But I just got so excited, and I fell in love with color, with light, with pattern, and I fell in love with the idea of crafting something, making something that came off of my fingers. And so I was like 17 years old, and I got this thing in my head that I was going to create large-scale work all over the world that would have a positive impact on humanity someday. Where does that come from, right? I mean, that's got to be bigger. That's bigger than yourself. And my mission in life, I think, is kind of morphed now, where it's more about edifying the spirit of humanity by bringing beauty and meaning into the world through the art that I do. I know it sounds very lofty and all that, but you got to start somewhere, right? So you might as well start way up here and see where you fall. So, but what happened to this thing about having the heart and mind of an artist and not having any talent? What are you going to do with that, right? So I thought, well, what I lacked in talent, that by working really hard, and maybe I could earn it, and I could learn it just by showing up every day and being really aggressive about it, and I was. But having vision is great. That's totally awesome. I think that you got to have it. But getting there is like, well, that's kind of a whole different gig, and I'm going to go into that in just a moment. But really, when I say I had no talent, I mean, I'm really going to lay it on you here. Look at this. I mean, this is really unicorns, really? Really horrible nudes. I mean, but I was already doing the hustle. This little art fair, craft fair. My dad made me the little frame to hang them up and all of that. So, gee, I was so naive, but I was so proud, but I didn't know it was so ugly. It was so bad. This is my surrealist period. So it's probably taking some sort of, medication, if you know what I mean. And I just can remember sitting in my little apartment there, staring at that thing, thinking that was the coolest thing I ever saw. And I just couldn't believe that I made it, I'm like, oh, how did I get that little piece of glass, inside piece of glass without a little line on it and all that. So, and I also learned about polyester shirts and polyester slacks, yeah, that's me. So I set up my studio in my kitchen in my little apartment, and I made another unicorn. Well, so how did you get from there to so that's what when I put this talk together, I was really trying to figure that out. How did I get from that parrot, the unicorn, and juvenile hall to being able to do these incredible, beautiful installations in these really great public venues? So it makes me think of David Byrne from the Talking Heads, right? Like, how did I get here? I don't know. So I can tell you how, for me, it's these things right here. I thought about it. And, I'm totally a passionate person. I totally committed. I'm all in, both arms, both legs. Diligence. It helps to have a kind of a work ethic, so I definitely like to work. I'm absolutely and totally relentless in what I do. I'm a absolutely shameless self-promoter. I'm totally willing to take risks. I'm totally willing to be rejected. I don't really like it very much, to be honest with you. And I know some of you in this room, for some projects I've been rejected for, and I don't hold it against you. my biggest attribute is that I'm naive. I'm just so naive. All those things above naive, I'm just doing it and doing it. And it didn't occur to me, like when I put the unicorn up on that stand at a craft fair, that I don't know, maybe they were even laughing at me, I don't know, but I'm out there, I'm trying. So now I'll talk a little bit about this balancing act between being a business person, building a studio practice and all of that, and at the same time being an artist. And if you get one out of sync, it's not gonna work. So let's do the studio business first. First year, $500 in my garage. All right, so this is post unicorn, but not too much further. But so I quit my job, and I put a work table in my little garage, and I started. And I really wasn't very good still at all. For 20 years, I was in this old tannery in Napa. See, I got my little pickup truck with a magnetic sign and my little handmade A-frame, and I got it going on, and it kept growing. And so I got this project at Stanford, started experimenting with laminating and multiple layers of glass, and that naivete really helps also when you're making things or dreaming up something. And I come back to the studio, and then, well, how are you going to make that? That's not even possible. And I always think, well, in the 60s, somebody was walking around on the moon. So if that can happen, there's no reason to limit the way that you're thinking about something, right? And then these are little milestones along the way. I got a job with Richard Meyer's office at the Getty, so, doors, I mean, that's debatable whether that's art, but it's certainly art glass, and, it's just working with really prestigious architects, one step at a time. And then now, it's been 7 years now that I opened this studio and I'm gonna get into the studio a little bit more. So those I've only been in 3 places. Garage for a year, 20 years in the tannery. Really crummy building, but big, it was beautiful, had skylights, whatnot, into this old hay barn. So starting in that garage, that's probably about 30 years ago, basically starting from just about zero. And now what's happened, it's actually only happened in the past year, where I finally broke through the ceiling. I kept hitting the ceiling, and I couldn't get my gig any further. And really, it's not really about the money, really. It's the money just represents the opportunities that I can find out there. And I have way more creative capacity than the opportunities I can find. So that's why I kept trying to break through this ceiling. So I've gone through three recessions, 2 earthquakes, and 2 floods. And I'm still standing here. And Jägermeister last night. So I tell you, every day's a work day, every night's a weekend. Don't forget that. So along the way, there are these pivotal decisions, business decisions that you're faced with. I should say that I found myself faced with. So that tannery, that lease is finally coming to an end. Well, do I shut it all down and just get a little art studio and have people make my work and all that, or do I just kind of just throttle all the way up and just go? So I conned the bank into loaning me $3.5 million, $2 to buy the property and another $1.5 million to gut it. And I got my doors open just when the recession started. It was such great timing. Not at all. It was really crazy, but well, anyways, we survived it, but we have this beautiful studio. I have an art gallery there, conference rooms. The upstairs where that big skylight is, that's all the admin functions. And then the tall, big part in the back is where all the fabrication takes place. So talk a little bit about then how one goes about, or how this artist went about growing the business. And the business, again, it's just a vehicle for me for that outlet of that creativity, so I could fulfill what I kind of called out for myself as my mission. One of the most important parts of growing a business is people. The people that you work with, that you surround yourself with, the kind of clients that you get to work with or not. We all probably would agree that this world would be a lot better place without people in it, don't you think? Because it's such a pain in the ass sometimes. And it's been really sometimes very, very difficult keeping a team together, the right team, and everybody has their own different needs and whatnot. And what are you gonna do so that they feel like they have some ownership in what we're doing and why we're doing it, and getting the right talented people, the balance of the right people. So actually I wanted to use that opportunity to give some kudos to the people that have worked for me in the past and that work for me now. Andrew Carnegie, well, back in the day it was no man, but let's just say no person will make a great leader that wants to do it all him or herself, or tries to get all the credit for doing it. So I've always been very gracious that way. I don't know how else to do it. I'm so grateful that people, even though I know I'm paying them, I'm so grateful that they would want to be around me and help me fulfill the mission that I have for myself. So I used to be structured like this, and you see all the little dots, there's different positions there: project management, there's marketing, there's money people, there's artisans in the shop, digital designers, all that stuff. And it felt like it was all, well, it was organized this way. So I'm having to touch everything every day, all the time, and this is my brain on that kind of structure. Okay, so it's just like, wow, oh my God. And so what happens is, I think the business suffers for it, and so does the creativity, if you do it the way that I had it. So a couple of years ago, we changed it all. So I actually moved out of the administrative thing. I had a big daddy pants office up there. I moved down into my art studio, got a little corner for my computer and my phone, so I'm with the art every day. And I'm right there where the fabrication studio is, and I know, because I have taken me years to get organized like this and to have the right people in those places. So being structured this way allows me actually to drink cocktails with the Mona Lisa and hang out and recharge the creative battery, all those things that an artist, I suppose, does. And I have that imbalance with the studio and have business because I have such a really tight structure with really talented people in all those key positions. So the two biggest challenges, I should have probably covered that people in capital and asked somebody to guess, but after 30 years in this game, I'm telling you, it's people, inside and outside. Remember we said the world would be better without people in it, but here we are. And so, and the other thing is cash flow. It might sound a little weird for an artist to be talking about business and cash flow and stuff, but I tell you, if that stuff's not working real smooth, it's very distracting. If you're wondering how you're gonna make payroll, or it's time to buy some milk and eggs, and you're not sure, and I don't know, in the bank, and you're hiding from the bank and whatever, that's very distracting. And I just went through that for a couple of years now with that recession, but I didn't lose any staff. We managed to stay busy. And I showed you earlier how we finally busted out through the ceiling now. Now it's just crazy taking off. It's awesome. So Greg and his group was asking me and asking my staff to talk a little bit about why go to all the trouble to build that studio when you could outsource everything. And I think a lot of artists do, and I think that's awesome, and I think it's great. And I'm even doing it a little bit here and there myself. But well, the reason is, I didn't go to art school actually, but I took a couple art classes, and I remember being so struck by not really what we were being taught, but the energy in the room. All these artists and that buzz, that creative buzz. And so I can't have that buzz if I'm sitting over there by myself with my easel and it's just me and that's it. I can't do that. I just go crazy. I need to have lots of going on around me. So I recreated that energy by having a studio. And remember I was talking about the craftsmanship, and so I started as more of a craftsman. And so the idea, I've always made things myself. I don't anymore. Actually, when I go out in the studio these days, they're always worried I'm either gonna break something or hurt myself, so they're discouraging me from helping. And like Peter's studio, or Derek's, or I didn't even know those studios existed back then. And by the time I did, well, I already had a studio, so there's no point in closing it and going over there now, so I just didn't know. So that's that naive part again. If you don't know, well, then you do it different. And I do feel like, though, I have more control of the outcome. I go from my art studio and I walk right over there, there's fabrication, And that also then becomes an extension of the fabrication becomes an extension of the creative process. Johnny on the spot, change it, do this, do that, and farming it out. In some cases for me, you know, there's a certain disconnect that I have to grapple with. So, well, where's the beef? What am I talking about? Where's the beef? Well, if you don't have any opportunities, you have no business. You have no ability to manifest the creativity that you have within and all of that. So the question becomes then, or the question was for me, well, where are the opportunities? And they come basically from 3 buckets, 2 fat buckets and 1 itty bitty bucket. It's the public art, it's the private sector, they're very kind of big umbrellas. And then I have a little bucket for the fine art. I'll talk about it in just a moment. To give you a sense of what it's like to do public art, this is pretty much, my staff is just crazy about data, and so this is all real. So average 150 times a year that we're throwing our hat in a ring, right? You know the drill, 10 images, resume, letter of interest, blah, 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 100 other artists, 200 artists, and what are the chances of that? Well, at 115, about 15 times, well, congratulations. Can you do something really cool for us and, you know, do it for free, and then we'll see if we like it and whatever. Okay, and then so you wind up winning, I wind up winning 3 to 5 of those. This year's gonna be different. It looks like it's already past 5 wins, so things are changing a little bit. But over a long period of time, that stuff adds up, right? And success begets more success and that sort of thing. Then the other one, so you know, all the different categories, I guess I call this, is where a lot of those public art projects come from. And I always have to put in there and everything else because sometimes they come from the oddest places. Private sector, there's no surprise there, right? High-end residential, healthcare, commercial developments, ecclesiastical, and everything else. And then the fine art, which is a very small percentage of my business, and the only reason I started fine art much later in my career. And you know, Pam, for example, when we did Houston Hobby together, from the time I started that project till it was installed, 5 years went by. And so as an artist, I needed like more immediate creative gratification. So I started making the smaller scale work. But then how do you sell it? Or do you even care? I mean, so galleries are a pain in the ass, so I don't really do that very much, but sometimes pop-up exhibits and that sort of thing, in wineries and that sort of thing. And the fine art gives me an opportunity to explore with different materials and different stories and all of that. This is kind of how it breaks down past 2 years or so. It's about half is private sector, 35% is public art. There's a little sliver for the fine art buckets. There were times when that public art was like 80% of the business, and that's very, very scary because it's a very unstable, unreliable. I've won projects where they say, well, that's great, you won, but oh, we don't have the funding yet. Or, or we're not going forward with that building or whatever. So you can't put all your, everything in one bucket. You really have to stay diverse. So I've tried to get that a little bit more balanced, and it's working. But it's not like you just go flick a switch and say, oh, I'm gonna change that percentage. You just, you know, and you just keep pushing on it. So, you know, Andy Wig Warhol here, I'm not sure I understand what the hell he's saying. But, and I think he's out of balance here, you know? So making money is art, I don't know, and working is art, yes, I believe that. And good business is the best art. So for me, to be able to do my best art, the business has got to be really organized and successful and all that, and then I can just fly as an artist then. But I think that Andy here is a little, I think he's out of balance. I'm trying to get a balance. I think he's kind of more about the money and the fame and all of that. So creative process, it's my dad, Stud Muffin Dad here, he really believed this, that the world has been in cultural decline since the Renaissance. All right, and so he was banging on me when I was a kid that was true. He said that, like, we were driving in the Impala one time at night, the dashboard's glowy, turns on the radio, and it was the Beatles, and he said, you know why they call them the Beatles? Because they came out of the sewer. And then he pushed the other button, and it was classical music, and that's music. And so, it's classical music, Renaissance art, German philosophy, all that stuff is what I was indoctrinated with, I'll say it like that. And he got his little gig as an immigrant to be a window display guy, self-taught. He was actually a barber, but got a job being a window display artist for a department store. And he would do these crazy windows. That one on the left, not since Eve have women felt so free. And there's got a snake coming up between her legs and all this stuff, It's a big hoopla in downtown Napa. But every window that he did told a story. There was always some sort of narrative. There was always a reason for it to be there. And so a couple times he had me clean out those windows, and he'd give me all these prune crates, and he'd have me arrange them in the window, and then we would critique them as a composition, take a Polaroid of them, and no matter which way you turn that Polaroid, that composition's got to add up. Right? So the two things I got out of Papa Bear was composition and storytelling. Right? So remember, I didn't go to art school, I didn't go to business school, so I'm just trying to learn as I go along from the people that I come into contact with. So this was obviously one of my earlier teachers, I guess you would say. And then there's Johannes Schrader. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Johannes Schrader, but I consider him arguably one of the best, greatest living glass artists of our time in the world, really. He's just so awesome. And I met Johannes much later. I think my dad had passed away. And his work just blew my mind. I just couldn't believe, going from the Renaissance man to this kind of stuff. I think my dad would be turning in his grave, but I had such a visceral, incredible reaction to this kind of art. It just changed everything for me in the way that I thought. And I brought him over and had 2 workshops in my studio. I had glass artists coming from all over the world, and it was just incredible. I don't know how long this probably feels like 20 years ago. But I learned what people probably already knew, because it was so obvious that the complexity of abstract art is so incredible that a story can be told through art without representational components. It's like, duh, but it was like an epiphany for me. And it really, really made me think about, I don't know why, but what my priorities were as an artist, and the business part, and who I was as an artist, and where I wanted to go, and all of that. So in the public art and the private sector, the creative process is very, very similar. I always start, well, who's the art for? Not the client, not the person that's writing the check, although I got to get around that too, but who's using that space every day? And an airport in Houston is different than an airport in Raleigh, is different than a train station in Florida. It's just, they're all different. There's a different geographic thing, there's a different, I'm gonna call it a microculture there. There's different parameters, so who's gonna be seeing that art every day? What is the context, and what is the story? What's the story? I'd love to be able to tell a story. And the story is already there. My job is just to kind of peel it back and figure out how to tell it. How are the design decisions vetted before they're presented to the client, and budget versus design and all of that? I had limited time here, so I don't really have time to get into that unless you want to ask me later. And I always having to balance and figure out what factors are going to influence the materials, fabrication decisions, how are you going to make it? Lee, you were talking about fire sprinklers earlier, so you've got all these weird things that you have to, they're not weird, but you have to be very practical about it. There's no sense in coming up with some crazy thing that can't afford, it's too heavy, and it's a fire hazard. Well, no, don't even bring that forward. And you're going to outsource it, or are you going to do it at home? So story and concept is first for me. That's where I start always. Then I got to think about the money, because I got to back into the budget, and the client usually doesn't say, oh, Gordon, it's okay. We'll find you an extra $100,000. That never happens, okay? So it is what it is, and so you got to be more beautiful and more clever and more relevant than all the other ones that you're competing against, and you got to do it for that much amount of money, end of story. And then of course, then the materials kind of get shaken out of the story and how much money you have to work with. So I'm just going to hit you with a couple of case studies. I know that some of you were here, not here, but in San Francisco last year, and I spoke at that one as well. So some of these things you might already be familiar with. I know that you heard from Cheryl, was that yesterday, on RDU. So this was a really exciting project for me, and it was sometimes painful getting to get there. You know, the money didn't quite work because there are all these things that, you know, I'll just give you an easy example. That figure standing on that pipe weighs like 30 pounds. You can lift it with your hand like that. And the engineers could not figure out how to pull a cable from one end of the building to the other. And I was trying to explain to them, there's like, you ever heard of the Golden Gate Bridge? You know, like cars going over it, it's cables, get it? They just wouldn't do it. So I went, you know, so I had to use a 2-inch stainless steel pipe, and I had to weld it together in sections on site and blah, 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 blah. So it wasn't quite how I wanted it. Aesthetically though, it came out, it's fine, it's super awesome. But you have to, is it compromise or is it collaboration? I mean, like, you know, that's a real balancing act there. And we really started with a completely different concept, as Cheryl could share with you. I don't have time to do it now. What was really cool about this project though is that the client, I won, but then they didn't want to do what I won with. And so then they're like, well, what are we gonna do? And so Cheryl said, well, why don't you just have them come back and we'll start over and we'll do it together. And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. So I've always thought that it's better to choose your artist not based on the concept, but on the merit of their past achievements, their personality, how do they fit with your project, and then pick them that way. And now you can have a dialogue with your committee or whatever, and the artist can come back at you with 2 or 3 concepts, and we can refine them, and we can vet it, and instead of, this is what I want to do, no, this is what I want to do, and then you pick one, and that's it, and off you go. And you lost a huge opportunity. First of all, you burned up a whole bunch of everybody's time, all kinds of time. Let's say you don't care about all the artist's time that got spent, but your time and your staff's time, and then you lost the opportunity to collaborate. You know, so that's just my opinion. So, and this was awesome too, because, you know, they said, well, you can't put anything on the floor, and you can't hang anything from the ceilings, and you can't put anything on the walls, and like, well, great, thank you. So how about those beams right there, and whatever. So, but a really, I feel like a really successful project. And look at, nothing to do with glass. There's no glass there. There's shadow and light, and there's narrative, there's story. But you know, I'm not a purist in terms of material. I'm not loyal to glass. I feel like I'll look at the project for its own parameters that it has, what opportunities it has, and it doesn't matter if I've never done it before. So I'd encourage you to encourage other artists to think that way, and take a little bit of risk with them and let them do something that they've never done before. And that's Christina, who works for me. So we had to really be careful with the whole ethnic thing. So, you know, and there's only 7 figures, but there's more ethnicities than that. So how do you do that? And my daughter's half Mexican, so that counted as Hispanic. And oh my God, remember that, Cheryl? That was a big hassle too. Oh God. Pam, raise your hand. That girl right there, she's awesome. What an advocate, and what a painful project, huh? It was just so crazy, 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 and it wasn't me. Unless Pam's gonna say it was, I don't think that it was. They picked me. And so the story was, you see where that little yellow arrow is? That's a connector bridge that connects the ticketing counters to the gates. And so I chartered that little plane with a kind of broken window, and hang out the window and take pictures. So it's called Over Houston. And then we transcribed these images. We picked 6, and then it was amazing how much color digitally that I could pull out of those images, and then crop them and manipulate them, and then the transcription. Transcribing from that into glass was, it was done with so much love. Every piece cut, sandblasted, airbrushed, enamels, fired, fused, and then also the very practical matter that is hurricane glass. It has to be an IG unit. You have to reverse engineer it so that it's going to, it has to have very stringent structural parameters to it. So all of those things have to be taken into consideration. I think this is probably to date, our most successful glass installation. Actually, I have to confess, I'm very proud of it, especially if I were to put that next to the unicorn again. You know? So, yeah, there's just some other images of it. This is up in Salt Lake City, so it's at the airport, but the airport wasn't my client, and so they have had some tension sometimes between the train people, what are they called, tracks, and the airport, and it's kind of like BART with San Francisco Airport. You know, they're always kind of, I don't know what their problem is, but in any event, it was inspired by Bryce Canyon. You can see on the right this little model, and it's actually very simple. They're just steel fins, but look at the color, the light, the shadow, and when you're going by this on a train or driving by it, it dances because those fins open and close, open and close. This is a BART station we just finished. It's a connector to the Oakland Airport. It's the Coliseum station. It was originally going to be called Bouncing In and Out of Oakland because the Coliseum, get it, basketball and all that. But the Warriors, I guess, are moving or something, so they're all upset. And so they didn't want any sports references. I mean, there's political stuff sometimes that you have to go through, so I had to take the little dashed lines out and change the name. In any event, it's all fused glass on these windscreens, basically. Bringing some light and some color, some playfulness. And these environments can be so sterile. Unless they're older, then they're really stinky, right, and dirty. So, you know, art is, as we all know, is one of those tools that we can use is to humanize the environments that we use as human beings. This is kind of one of Gordon's greatest hits, the aluminum yucca, right? So starts with a little sketch, a little model. It's made out of recycled fuel tanks from military aircraft. Albuquerque has maybe half their population is Air Force related, and the yucca is also their state flower. So these aluminum forms are, made from recycled fuel tanks. So there's that kind of story, that connection. And just the gesture of a yucca tree is like welcoming, isn't it? Like your arms are up. And so this is a gateway project. So you see this on the freeway before you see Albuquerque. And over that 15 to 20 seconds, depending on how fast you're driving, it gently moves from one color to another color to another color in a very soft, beautiful way.
Gordon, what year is that?
This is post-unicorn, but that's probably, could be almost 10 years now. Could be at least 10 years. I think it's in the catalog, I could look. And you know, I had no idea how I was gonna build this. So some of this is just being charming and being a good salesman, and I gotta get it by you. And then once I do, then I gotta scramble and figure out how to make it. It's not quite that way anymore because my staff really doesn't let me do that. They really vet everything now. So we do preliminary job costing before I go any further. I show it to the whole team. They're kind of boring that way, but it's really good for people like you to know that the artist is gonna be bringing you something that can actually be done. So, you know, would that university project be better off without art on that roundabout? I don't think so. Look how different it is. It feels like there's something missing without it. It's just aluminum and dichroic fins. Is that you? Austin's making noise with your phone. This was an aha moment. Their company was called Aha, actually. This one used to be called Krauts on Pipes because myself and two of my German friends on a weekend with a forklift, I had these pipes, so we decided to make a sculpture out of it, so I called it Krauts on Pipes, and it was, so then somebody wanted to buy it, but I had painted it, so I had to change the name. This is a vessel. This is a water treatment place, so the idea is a vessel with sparkling clean water. This is, I think, 6 tons of stainless steel and dichroic glass in the Black Forest of Germany. Hand-drawn rods and all of that. That was a really, really successful project as well. I'm almost done, so I hope you're hanging in there. So recently, I think a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it was completed, but we got 30 tons of steel from the World Trade Center, and I committed to getting this steel without having a place to put it, without the city saying they wanted to do it, all of that. But you got to start somewhere. So I started with, it's a long story how I got the steel. I got a trucking company from California to donate their 2 drivers and their trucks, and they went and got it and brought it back. The fire department came and jackhammered all that concrete out of it. We did a public-private partnership with the city, so they gave us a little bit of land downtown and put $100,000 towards it. I was able to raise about another $125,000, and we were able to deliver to my community basically a $1 million park with Memorial Park for the 9/11 for basically honoring the victims, their families, and then one of those panels also has a narrative in the glass, so it's very easy to forget that these things happen and all of that. And they do field trips with all the different schools, and sometimes I go there and give them a little talk.
Did
and
you
that's.
fabricate the glass on that one?
Did I?
How?
It's like 1/2 inch on 1/2 inch laminated with a vinyl printed inner layer. So these are a couple things that we're doing now. Well, that's a blank canvas right there. What are you gonna do? So this is at Stanford, in Stamford, Connecticut, Stanford Hospital. So, you know, they started with maybe 100 artists, they got it down to 6 or 7, and phone interviews, and then down to 2, and then I'm sharing with them how I'm thinking about it and what sources of inspiration and that sort of thing. And then what I didn't really show them, honestly, is the top right, because I didn't think they would appreciate sidewalk cracks, but I thought they were really beautiful. So really what I did is I told them they were waterways, and so and they went for it. So that's what we're making now. So it's a meditation room basically. That's the exterior view. This is all being fabricated now in the shop. So this is all done with Fritz. You know, when I started in the unicorn period, there was leaded glass and there was etching. Pretty much that was all that was out there. There's maybe some enameling going on. I know there was, but I didn't know anything about it. But now there's dichroic and all these high-tech laminates and fusing. You couldn't take 2 different colors of glass and melt them together in the kiln. They would just break. They just blow up. Now there's hundreds and hundreds of glasses colors of glasses that you can fuse together. You can take, those are on the bottom left, that's glass powders. It's called frit. You can mix those together and really do some incredible things in glass that wasn't even possible before. No black lead lines around everything and that sort of thing. So this is called the Hand of the Land, and this is going to be in downtown Napa. Right now it looks like a big fat maybe because I serve on the City of Napa Planning Commission. I'm actually the chair, and this year I am. And the Planning Commission is the governmental body that approved this hotel, which I recused myself from, by the way. And now this sculpture that I'm doing with the client, or that the client wants, has to go in front of the Planning Commission. It was in the newspaper, and there's this big brouhaha every day. There's 6, 7 letters to the editor in the paper, and what's that hand, and is he pinching his testicle, and what? I mean, the things that people are saying on Facebook and blogging. We have a whole new culture because of that blogging. You could sit at home in your pajamas from the comfort of your home and talk the meanest smack about somebody without knowing anything really what you're talking about, and then you read the previous one and so, oh yeah, me too. And so it's turned into a big brouhaha, so we'll see what happens. But I'm actually very excited about it. I'm not really excited about getting beat up in the papers though. This is a glass wall for a parking garage. There's a mineral called poppy jasper. Never heard of it before, but it's indigenous to this community. So we got a piece, polished it, did super high res image photography, and now we're transcribing that into glass, and it'll become like a lantern when it's lit up at night. And it's very visible from the downtown corridor, so it's going to become something of a little bit of a landmark. And the experience of getting out of your car and going down those stairs, parking garages are not usually fun, but it's almost like a church-like experience, or a Jimi Hendrix experience. And then I had this spider, so there was a petition, like 1,500 people signed this petition to kill the spider, another online brouhaha thing. So the other thing that Morgan Hill has is a lot of tarantulas. They even have a tarantula festival. So I said, oh, cool, I'll do a tarantula. But we're gonna cover it with motorcycle and car headlights, and they're all gonna light up. And oh, wow, they're so excited. It's still, it's all happening now, it's cool, but what a pain in the butt with the bloggers and the petitions and all. You know, it's just a spider. It's going to scare the kids. They said that at RDU too, that the riot is going to scare the kids. Why? They're going to laugh. They're going to point. Whatever. So, you know, this whole idea of walking the line, every artist has their own path, and more power to everybody, but everyone's, and I didn't mean to go so deep on the, well, I did, on the personal story side, because I had to put it into context, and everybody has different experiences growing up and finding their way and finding their path. And I just shared with you what mine was. Having a strong business studio practice in place is really, really critical to be able to deliver a solid concept, design and finished installation, and do that stuff on budget. You just have to have that. I have to have that to be able to deliver that to you. Balancing your artistic integrity, whatever that means, with having a sustainable business is a very tricky thing that has taken me a long time to get very comfortable with it. I feel like I got it down, but not in the beginning. It was very shaky, lots of falling down and whatnot, but I think I got it now. And that balance is really, I've decided it comes from teamwork, experience, collaboration. That's really where it's at. So what's the point of all of this is we want to edify the spirit of humanity through bringing beauty and meaning into the world through art. But it takes more than creativity. It really takes more than creativity. It requires business acumen and a really solid business structure around you. And that's it. How'd I do? I don't know if we have time for any questions, or maybe you don't have any, but going once, going twice. I know you guys are probably getting hungry. I'm gonna go take a nap. Yeah, please.
Since you are in a studio practice and you have people supporting you, are you involved in the process of putting together your submission package and the selection of images that we're responsible for reviewing?
Mm-hmm. I had a feeling you were going to ask me that based on that comment you made back there. So, no, that's good. So now I'm at a place where I have so much to pick from. It's sometimes very challenging to figure out which ones to show you, because I'm only getting 10 images, or 12, or 15. So I have somebody that's full-time, that's all she does is public art, research, submissions and all that. I always edit them or proof them, so I do see all of them. The letters, I have to be really honest, a lot of times I don't read them anymore because it really becomes the same thing over and over again. Blah, 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 and, but if it's something that's very, very specific, because the reason that they're always often the same is because I'm very consistent in my philosophy about how I view a project and how I'm going to approach it, so I don't have to write the same thing over and over again, so she does that. Sometimes I'll add a paragraph of my own that's very specific to that project. That was my answer.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Going once, twice? Okay, thanks again.